Good afternoon. I'm returning guest Jeffrey Thomas Black. We're going with to talk about AI on the rise. You may know him from his DoorDash closure, Substack, and now his new thing is R9 Media on his civil rights activism articles. I'm not really sure which articles you have on there yet. Do you have many?
They published a couple. They published Brutal Reality, and they published Citizenship as a Death Sentence. Who knew? And both of those are real favorites of mine because they both speak to the callous nature with which we treat the death of others who are not just kind of like us, but exactly like us. They are us. And in fact, my friend Will, who is the editor of R9 Media, just did a YouTube talk today about necropolitics, which is the power of the state to let people die, to use death for their power, which is what they do. And I would say, that what are borders? Borders are for powerful men to engage in arbitrage and power protection schemes while people die. So borders are about necropolitics. They're about the fact that if people die on that side of the magic line instead of this side of the magic line, then it's okay. And I'm an old peacenik. I never think it's okay, but what are you gonna do? So anyway, thanks for having me back. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you back too, because in like the 30 days between the first interview and now, we've seen AI just blow up on everywhere. It's, AI is going to save you at the doctor's office. AI is going to save you at Bing. It's going to teach you how to do more creative searches. And we found out
going to save you or kill you immediately.
A little bit of both. A little bit of both, apparently, on Bing. It got angry with the questions it was at, and it started to actually threaten the reporters with smearing.
So that's a really interesting point. I wrote an excerpt of it, but it's actually in the next chapter that will be. No, it was in the last chapter published. I can't remember what I've published and what I haven't published. But it's AI is anything but godlike. Mm-hmm. And the key about AI, to just make a really quick summary of how to process it, is that AI is trained upon real human data, mm-hmm. which means that every bias, every cultural idiosyncrasy, every insanity and cruelty is going to be codified right in that information. And it's not necessarily even intentional, but the perfect example, of course, is AI art. AI art produced a lot of art of white people. Mm-hmm. Why is it doing that? Well, the AI art was codified by images on the internet, which the preponderance of images that fill the internet for the most clicks probably, I'm guessing, have white people in them. So the majority of art that it's cruising to formulate images have white people in them. So we have to realize that, intentional or not, artificial intelligence, it's really artificial ignorance, right? The AI, think of it as artificial ignorance. It's ignorant of reality. It's spouting data from the past, and not even the recent past. I think I read that much of the data that current AI is trained upon is from a number of years back, maybe as much as 10. So because this data has to be really cultivated to be available for AI to process it, and that's not a simple process to use process too many times. The other thing that is good to point out, I see you're pulling up an article here, is that the processing of data for AI can even be done by humans, which are, again, doing that with their own biases. Last time we talked, I misspoke about the country that this happened in. But people in and I'm going to look to make sure that I get the country right this time, because I've been looking at too many things today. Let's see, Kenyan data labelers were paid $2 an hour to label child sexual abuse, bestiality, and other horrific content for ChatGPT creator OpenAI, report says. So the exchange that was made in the corporate calculus was that horrifically traumatizing Kenyans at a bargain price of $2 an hour was a pretty good deal for humanity. Now, that's an ethical argument, isn't it? That's an ethical argument that we have to come to terms with as we're training AI, and AI is not fully trained yet. AI is a very ignorant baby. We have to come to terms with how we train it. How do we use humans? Are humans now just lab rats that we can just, kill in the process? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty telling that the CEO of OpenAI is also a doomsday prepper himself. I mean,
right, and I guess our FTX founder was also very operative in the OpenAI creation, right?
Right. But what I'm just saying is that, I mean, all of those things that they're creating is that they don't really believe that they're going to do any real good in the end. If you're stashing guns and gold and gas masks in a secret bunker somewhere. So you have to
good is not part of a corporate calculus, and corporate calculus is what creates AI.
I know it is, but I'm just saying is that if you think about it, they're selling it as a public good.
Yeah.
And their personal actions are saying that, well, we're just going to make a lot of money on this at this point, and then we're going to step out because we still think that somehow there's going to be an Armageddon of some sort, and maybe even we trigger it.
They do.
We've put everybody out of work. We've reduced the social connections so much that no one really trusts anyone anymore. You don't know whether or not you're on the phone with with some kind of lab rat AI system, or you're talking to a human, right? You don't know if at the end of the phone call they're going to take all the data they just got from you and sell it to some other AI company so that they can train theirs to be a little bit better at fooling you into doing stuff.
Right. Or in the case of my book Full Dash Closure, which talks about the gig economy and DoorDash. Right. You don't know that you're working for corporate AI and that not a single human in any way, shape, or form is involved in your employment, your pay, your merit, your judgment, or your termination. It's a horrifying circumstance, and that is why I call it the singularity, the DoorDash singularity, because singularity, there's many different forms of it, but the most important aspect of is it hinges upon the fact that the human that is perceiving the output of data doesn't know if that's coming from an organic source that's involved in a human business or an inorganic source, which would be just a corporate AI.
So the passage I should put up is from a book called After the Gig by Juliet Schor, and she points out a lot of what you're saying. And this was published, I believe, in 2011, 2012. She did a large-scale study on how AI and what people feel about AI and the managing of AI especially. And as you like to say, they are exactly black boxes. No one really knows how the algorithms all interact.
Right.
Even the designers don't really know which algorithms are choosing and picking out which part of the solution that they're getting at the end.
Right, which is the ultimate reason why legislators and regulators are never going to save you from corporate AI, is that it's not because they're dumb. They may be or they may not be, but no human is in the position to understand the inner workings of black box AI and somehow legislate it, shift it, adjust it to be fair, because that's not within our capability. So we've broken the oversight systems for a just society in which people receive equal protection under the law. They do not receive equal protection under the law today. That's a real problem.
Oh, it is. And like you're saying, there's no way of regulating AI right now, the way they've created the systems. You can't really say that the system.
I don't think you can regulate AI's function. You can regulate how AI is allowed to be used, and you can also regulate how AI is used with informed consent upon humans as opposed to deceptive. So I think that's really the two things that humans can do. Is we can say it's okay to use AI in this circumstance, but it's not okay to use AI in this circumstance. And then number two, we can say that we're going to use AI as a management tool for human beings, but every human being knows that this system is being run by AI. There's no humans on the other side that are thinking about them or worried about them or anything else. And here's your recourse, and here's how you fit into this picture. That may very well be the case. There may be, look, 15 restaurants and 15 DoorDash drivers give over 1 trillion possibilities for delivery scenarios. So if we take that example, which is obviously incomprehensible to the human mind, how to process 1 trillion options, if we give that scenario, we might be able to say that there is a valid way to use AI to dispatch delivery services like FedEx or UPS. But those are legitimate, big corporate AI problems. But those are businesses that are founded on the organic economy of the United States. They're not in an application isolated and gamed and gamblified with information. So we may be able to use AI for the dispatch function, but we're not using AI to exploit every single one of those drivers and make them crazy and enslaved. So it's a very subtle difference in a new paradigm. We don't do well with subtlety, and new paradigms are right past our head because we're playing the latest video game. So it's a very dangerous time in humanity, and that's why Chapter 4 is called "Will Corporate AI Kill Us?" And it's a real question. It's not just a rhetorical question. That's a real question.
Well, in a way, your question is really poignant because corporations have always used the ability of, it was just a corporate decision to justify, like Teflon in the water system due to Dow Chemical. Now
shipping enough opioids for every person in West Virginia to overdose 7 times.
Right, but what I was getting at
somebody knew that West Virginia could not consume that amount of opioids, right? That was not an oversight.
But here's the great part about AI. Now you don't have that even that. You don't have to know. You just say, look, we put the AI on it and it did its thing. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Senator.
No knowledge, no accountability.
Right.
It's beautiful. This is just like the gig economy. No employees, no workforce, no humans. Like, you can just forget about humanity and just start printing money, right?
Yes, you can.
That's the problem with employment, is that there's these pesky humans involved.
That is.
And humans are problematic in every way, shape, or form. If we could just get rid of the humans, imagine the money that corporations could make.
Right. And wasn't that really the goal behind California's Proposition 22 for DoorDash, was to absolutely encapsulate those workers in this like gray area of independent contractors permanently?
Absolutely. Look, again, so corporate AI is created to exploit humans and markets. That's it. It's the two things that corporate AI does. Neither of those is going to be good for any human or any market, which is the real problem. So when you get rid of the employee relationship between a corporation and its community, you get rid of all commonalities. Because what employment did in the corporate world is it made the corporate world accountable to human beings. That's what unions did. They made the corporate world accountable to human beings. And that is just not a model that corporations are okay with. So what they did is created the gig economy. I always said this old joke that what does minimum wage mean? Minimum wage means that we would love to pay you less. It's our dream to pay you less, but by law we can't. So that's there. And so now, why did they create the gig economy? It's not to give people flexible work. It's because the gig economy is the way that minimum wage no longer applies, because now they can pay you for minutes of an hour at some imputed wage, but that's not actually what they pay out. They're paying now for 19 minutes out of the 60 minutes in your hour. So you become, all humans in the gig economy become free labor capacity to use, abuse, terminate through AI, to game and gamblify, to incentivize. And this is like playing chess against the world's greatest chess computer. Every move you make, the computer's going to beat your pants off. There's no move you can make against a computer that solved chess, whether you're me or a grandmaster or a 6-year-old, that's going to beat this computer program. That's what labor is to AI. That's what consumers are to AI. If consumers think that they're not being exploited by AI, overcharged, gouged, having their community and small businesses ruined while they're being told they're supporting their local community. I mean, this is like a 40% tax on every dollar that's spent in the gig economy that's going to DoorDash. If anybody could figure out how that benefits their local economy, they've lost their mind, because it just doesn't.
Oh, no, I agree completely. I mean, there's so many problems with it because it is gaming both sides at once and causing all kinds of issues. But more importantly, where have we become disenchanted with it is that, it says the wrong thing, right? I mean, and that seemed, like an article, it writes a bad sentence and everyone's like, oh, well, it doesn't work there. But and while that's important, that kind of hides all of the real things that it's doing very, very well, which are deep data analysis. It's looking at the patterns of where people are shopping, and it's pushing them in those directions on purpose to benefit, more than anything else, the corporations. And we're not even seeing that because, we're reading an article about somebody who told it to draw an art piece and it stole half a Picasso and half a Rembrandt and squished them together.
That's right. Look, it's the tabloid news aspect of it that sells. The part that isn't selling in the tabloid news, and also the investment news, which is just a front for repetitive pump and dump schemes. Mm-hmm. What doesn't show in that is that AI, corporate AI in specific, is destroying employment and may very well kill humanity. That's what's not being written about, which is why I'm writing Full Dash Closure.
Which is great.
I'm
enjoying that. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it's free on Substack because I believe it's in the public interest. It'll be published in print as well, and that won't be free, I'm sorry. But it is free on Substack. It gave me a great opportunity to engage with the audience while I'm writing the book, which is a really fun way to do it. I engage a lot on Twitter, and there's podcasts on there too. You get the audio book that you can listen to on Apple Podcasts, everywhere else. And the reason this is important is not because I'm trying to plug the book. I'm making $0.00 off the work I've done for the last 8 months. So the reason that this is important is not because of me, because of this podcast, because of DoorDash or anything else. This is about human survival. This is about informed consent, because as they say in the book, to corporate AI, whether you know it or not, you are as vulnerable as a kitten. You have no defense against, as you said, whether that information is wholly correct or not. You may or may not even know the actual source that it came from, and you certainly don't know why it chose to give you the information that it did. And you know for a fact that it is not objective, it is subjective. It is anything you get from AI is being taken from a subset of information that AI chose to give you. So by definition, you got to trust whoever configured it to choose that subset. And if whoever configured it to choose that subset is an evil corporation with the metaphorical psychological motives of a psychopath, then guess what you're going to get? The product of a serial killer.
Yeah, you're going to get the choices that are all designed to put you in a position that benefits them solely.
Would you like to be eaten like a fava bean or like a lima bean?
Only if there's a good
Chianti. It's a great choice. You get to choose.
Only if there's a good Chianti to go with it.
Yes. Well, the Chianti is post-eating, but you can smell it. To take the metaphor as far as we can go into human death, that's where this goes. There's a very scary and interesting conversation that I included as a link in chapter 4, which you may or may not want to listen to, because depending upon, and I'm not joking, if you're dealing with some depression and some other things, this is really serious stuff. There are some very, very smart people out there that really believe that it's too late for us and that AI has already escaped Pandora's box and that we've got a few years to live. I choose not to process it that way. Number one, I'm not going to disempower the rest of my life and believe there's nothing I can do, even if I think that that's a total risk. But number two, we're empowered. Humans are empowered in this version of slavery, and this is slavery. I call it app slavery. But humans are empowered in this version of human slavery like never before. Right? When we look at chattel slavery, when it was around the globe, and unfortunately I think they're still around the globe in some places, this is not an escapable situation. These are people that are chattel slaves are sold, bought and sold as objects. The problem with this slavery is that people can be enslaved without knowing it. Their consciousness, their thoughts, their choices, their behaviors can all be enslaved by AI without knowing it. Well, but the key here is, unlike child slavery, if I took this iPhone right here, threw it out my window, and never picked up an iPhone for the rest of my life, I have now defeated corporate AI. So, internet notwithstanding. So the point is, and I call it the log outage, that humans absolutely could put DoorDash, which is cornering the market 65% on global app slavery right now and app colonization. They're going to be able to run entire nations of workforces with corporate AI. Be very afraid of that. So the thing that we can do before it gets to that spot where somebody puts this in the hand of a slave and says, if you turn this off, I'm going to kill you, which they could, right? If you don't get this message, I'm going to find you and I'm going to kill you. Well, so before that happens, we can all just turn DoorDash off and kill it, which is really the only solution.
Well, yeah, I think it is. And again, that brings us back to Sam Altman, because he was so instrumental in creating DoorDash. During his Y Combinator days, he was the guy that gave them their seed money to produce their, basically a failing business model. I mean, if it were a real business, it would have gone out of business 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was super dicey from the start. They recognized at the start that 85% of retailers and 85% of restaurants, 99% of retailers in the history of the United States economy had never had delivery options before. So the pandemic changed that game. But before that, in the Y Combinator days, their model focused upon Palo Alto, which is one of the wealthiest enclaves. It's the home of Stanford University.
Yes, it is.
It's one of the wealthiest enclaves in the United States, Palo Alto. And then major cities like New York, dense cities, Chicago, even I think Los Angeles becomes problematic because they knew that there was no model to take this out to the globe and the suburbs for last mile delivery and have it be profitable. But very, very quickly, and it's hard to know going back where this would have gone without the pandemic. But this was an AI scam from the start. Make no mistake about it. It was a scam that was based upon taking a percentage of transactions in wealthy economies. Now, what the pandemic did is it made it a global app slavery scam. It with the gig economy's advent that joined in with DoorDash and vice versa, it became this cabal of companies with Uber and Lyft and Grubhub and others around the world that wanted to establish this new category of human labor, which is actually human slavery, and call it the gig economy, and then package it up and sell it out as freedom because you now no longer have to go to a workplace. Well, being enslaved 15 hours a day on your cell phone and being gaslighted in a game world is not necessarily better for a human being than spending 8 or 9 hours around other human beings in a social and community located situation. I mean, what app slaves become is a new caste. And you see that already if you've done the work, and I have done the work.
Right. I mean, that's one of the big things that they always point out when people are interviewed. The gig economy is preferred because I don't have to connect with the guy that brings my food to me. I don't have to connect with the company. So I can then, if I don't like the fact that my burger tastes a little funny today, I can, write all these horrible reviews about the guy who brought it, the company that sent it. And I feel empowered to do that because I don't have any real connections. I don't say, oh, well, the guy, it's a hard job. He's been on the phone. He's been, driving around all day. It's just, it's somebody, he's got freedom. He should be here in 30 seconds or less.
Better yet, because of the propaganda, which is just ubiquitous from DoorDash. I mean, they're sponsoring the Major League Soccer, the NFL. They're on the Super Bowl commercials. They're in every university. They're with Starbucks. They're with Walgreens. Right. I mean, you can't. There was Sephora. You can't go a day without these guys linking up with another corporate entity. And by the way, the CEO of DoorDash is on the board of directors for Meta. So, if you want Mark Zuckerberg and Tony DoorDash Sue to rewrite your future, act now.
Well, Meta is scary because it's AI and it's trying to create a whole new reality. I mean,
it has created a whole new reality. It absolutely has, because there's millions of people in the gig economy that have no idea that they're working for corporate AI and have no idea that their choices are gamblified and gamified. It's very, very evil what's happening right now.
Yeah, that's the gig. But they're really trying to create this virtual reality where, you step out of the real world. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
It reminds me that
that's a coming phase in this virtual reality world of the metaverse, which, who knows if and when and how that will come. But absolutely, DoorDash and Meta and others have already gamified the fact that you can order from your gaming system without stepping out of the game. So It doesn't matter whether it's in the metaverse or whether it's in Call of Duty. You can have the Nazis wait just a second before you throw the bomb and order your hamburger.
That's right.
Great.
And I mean, I don't know if it's progress though. I mean, everything is being taken away. We're stuck in a little room now, talking on a computer, ordering from inside our app. Hold on, everybody. Need to order my fries with this. Writing up our bad report because it didn't come in the 5 minutes that it was promised. not leaving,
Right.
offering not to leave a tip.
Well, so there's a real problem with that too, is that because of the propaganda by DoorDash, and they tell everybody how they're empowering local economies, because there was no local economy before they put a 40% tax on it. DoorDash just innovated your local economy before it put them out of business. I mean, it's really absurd. But the issue is that oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Say what you were saying.
Well, what I was saying is that so they've put all this they've put you in this position where you're ordering all these things. You're You're always buying, and you have no connection between anyone there and the outside world.
So consumers don't understand what the gig economy is if they haven't done it. And one of the big things that happens as they turn the people against each other is twofold. Number one, consumers do know they're being gamed because it's very obvious on the consumer app that depending upon which order you choose things, your prices change. You know you're being upcharged. You know you're being gouged. You know that the delivery prices change. And
how is that even legal? Some of that.
The tip amounts they suggest change. So since consumers know they're being gamed, guess what they do?
Well, they have to take it out on.
So they go like, well, since DoorDash is offering all these subsidized $0 this, $0 that, $0 this, I'm going to game them, and I'm going to say my food didn't arrive. This doesn't matter because I'm screwing DoorDash, they're screwing me. It's all a big game. Who's caught in the middle is the labor, the dasher, the worker who gets accused of things that they didn't do because this fraud is going on both sides. They get abused and they're anonymized because, again, this fraud is going on between consumers and gig apps. And consumers, even if they're the good-hearted consumer that when they go out for a pizza, they're going to leave a $10 tip for the server, consumers don't know how the gig economy works. Consumers are struggling too, especially the demographic that's addicted to DoorDash. They're price conscious, if you will, right? But there's a elasticity of demand, and DoorDash needs prices to stay as low as possible so people order as much as possible and as often as possible, right? So consumers have no idea how gig labor is compensated. They don't know that gig labor is so heavily undercompensated by the corporations perpetrating this fraud that they become dependent upon what is positioned as a tip for an anonymous drone. And there's just problem after problem with their tipping system, and it's set up to fail by the way that it's designed. And so you've got this, what has always been, I think, kind of a religious war between people that think tipping is a good thing and people that think tipping is a thing that only occurs because labor is not getting enough pay in the start, and so they're philosophically opposed to it. So now we create this gig economy where tipping isn't even really tipping anymore, and the gig economy cabal, the gig economy corporation cabal, spend all their money putting out propaganda about either the consumer behaving badly or the dasher behaving badly so that each of them hate each other. It's pure societal poison. It's pure corporate propaganda. It's one of the most evil, I think, corporate social experiments that's ever happened, is the way that they are purposely, daily putting out stories that turn consumers against labor and labor against consumers. It's hideous.
So that gets me to my next point. Now, we all remember, and it ties in nicely, back in what was it, 2018, Uber went on strike. I think DoorDash did as well. All the gig workers, you remember? And
I don't know a lot of the strike history. So the strike history is interesting because the labor category technically is not allowed to strike. That is by definition what this labor category of gig
Yeah, well,
labor.
they're independent contractors, so that they
Right. They can
what
just
what
not show up, which
what is
is
a
equivalent
strike?
of a strike.
Yeah. So that brings me back. Now, if we remember back in time, back to the 1970s in Ireland, right? And this was really what I'm getting at is that they have no power. Even though you might have 100,000 employees in DoorDash, they have no power. And one of the great stories of labor was that in the 1970s, the Irish bankers went on strike. And it was going to be like the clearing banks that were going to actually process money, and they just folded. The bad wages, and they just closed. But nothing happened in the economy because they created all these pubs that everyone trusted, started to cash their own checks and started to keep accounts. And so you had this faux economy operating right next to it. And so what I'm getting at is, when you've gamed the system as much as the DoorDash people have, labor strikes are totally useless because you're not employees. You have the same problem that the Irish bankers had, right? I mean, people just say, "Oh, well, I'll go to Grubhub," or I'll schlep down to the place myself maybe once to get what I want. I
Right.
mean, and so you don't have any of those issues that we have. Like, say, if these were real employees, the company itself would just collapse.
Correct. And so the important thing to remember with the game worlds of all the gig corporations is they're not real markets. They control both the supply and demand for labor at all times. So they can just put more and newer people on the road if the ones that are out there don't want to do it. And the thing with the gig economy too, this is one of the terms that I established in the book for the book is labor laundering. It just like money laundering, labor laundering is about obscuring the sources and the outputs of labor. And that's what the gig economy does, because it fractionalizes everyone. Instead of being an employee that can be tracked by the government, now you are labor that, unless you receive over $600 in a year from a given corporation, you don't even have to get a 1099. So because of the way the gig economy works, because of the quick entry and exit and the quick failure and loss of many of its entrants, it is a labor laundering dream come true, and a global money laundering dream come true too. But labor laundering in particular is what's innovated in the gig economy, is that this stuff is all hidden, right? If Uber uses a little portion of this person, and then Uber Eats uses a little portion of this person, and Lyft uses a little portion, and DoorDash uses a little portion, and then they work 16 hours in a day because they're trying to make ends meet and crash into a brick wall and kill somebody and themselves, guess what? Total deniability. Yeah, I don't even know who he was working. I don't know. This was just an independent contractor out there in the grind. Which of the 7 different corporations employs this person? None. He employs himself. It's absurd. It is a way to transfer every externality, every risk, every expense and capital expense of corporations onto the backs of the most vulnerable laborers and workers in the world. It is, again, I'll say it, hideous. If you use DoorDash to buy food, if you use DoorDash for employment, if you use Uber, any of these things, these are toxic elements to humanity. Now, I always say for my gig app labor friends, and I have a lot of them, there are people today that can't survive without continuing to do this, at least in the short term. That doesn't mean that if it disappeared at this very moment, that everybody wouldn't be better off, because we're stuck in a situation of status quo. Because DoorDash is here, because they all control that market, we're trapped in this reality. But remember, all of us as consumers, all the gig app laborers, the quick entry or lower skilled category of labor has always been around. It's been around before the gig economy. It will be around after the gig economy scam ends. So remember that just because there would be a temporary disruption of pulling this maggot, this parasite out of the organism of humanity doesn't mean that the organism's not going to be better once it's gone. You're just going to have to take we're just going to have the surgeon numb us up a little bit, pull the thing out. Now we're all better off, and we're not having our life sucked away by a parasite. So there is an aspect of the fact that laborers are doing this to some extent today, but anybody that orders DoorDash or supports DoorDash or has their merchant, their business using DoorDash has to know that they're depending upon slave labor, has to know that they are depending upon vulnerable people losing money to do business for them. And it's just not okay. It's not even legal. You can't voluntarily choose to be a slave. Even that's against the law. So this gig economy just
I guess if you
all the tenets of humanity.
I guess if you
and of labor.
I guess the slave things in America we're a little flexible on that. If you do a crime, you can get the third year. We could use you for slave labor. Then you can volunteer to work for Cal Fire.
That is true. Yeah.
Which of course I really love that CBS has decided that they're going to really give California a one up and make it look like the fire department fighting forest fires is so great for the inmates that do it.
Yeah, well, so that's kind of like, it's very analogous to the gig economy compared to being locked up in a cell fighting fires. It's not, and living in a tent is not that bad. Well, compared to getting kicked out of your apartment and not being able to buy dinner for your kids.
Sure.
DoorDash maybe isn't that bad.
But does DoorDash really give you that? I mean, the prices I've seen that you've been pushing out are like $275 for a delivery. I haven't seen one over there.
So there's a massive surplus of labor available to the gig economy right now, which the gig economy corporations brag about the fact they can now depress their wages and pit the people against each other even greater because there's a massive surplus, and they know that the turnover is rapid fire, but that's great. They're not worried about customer service. They're worried about not having refunds. Anything up to a refund is fine with them. They don't care if your food's cold. They're not in the delivery business. They don't know your delivery driver. Like, they're a technology company running AI. There is nothing, if they cared about any of those things, they have the ability to control them, train for them, operate for them, plan for them, strategize for them. The reason they don't is they don't care. DoorDash employs a lot of people. They employ people that matter. DoorDash does not employ people that don't matter. Who doesn't matter?
Delivery guys.
They don't matter. So DoorDash doesn't employ them. It's very simple. If they mattered, believe me, DoorDash would be the first to step up with their billions and employ them, but they don't matter. Now, the employees at DoorDash matter. Like, we want them to have work-life balance, and we want them to have nice bonuses and make $200K a year and live their dreams. That's what it means to work for Tony Hsiu and DoorDash in the corporate office. What it means to be a dasher in the field is that you don't exist. They don't know you. They never met you. They don't know you. They don't have any data on you. You don't exist.
Well, you exist for about 30 minutes at a time.
Well,
the point where you pick up the point,
data exists within their simulation.
Right.
You don't exist.
But I'm just saying that when you pick up that delivery is when you start to exist, and when you
deliver
is when
you
you
have
end
an avatar that exists to them from the time that a delivery is picked up to the time when it's dropped off. For that period of time, they care about whether you're alive or dead or living or not. Yeah, and at no other point are you their responsibility. Only from the time you pick up that order till when you drop it off.
Well, you're not even really their responsibility even then, but that's when they're tracking you to make sure that you don't give them that horrible refund possibility.
Right. They're tracking you. Let's talk about what is data anymore. So we now have learned that Kroger, the largest, one of the largest grocery stores, or maybe the largest corporation.
Well, didn't it get its deal with Albertson, or what was that?
Yeah, they're in the process of acquiring Albertsons. That's correct. So they'll have an even bigger part of the market.
They will own literally every grocery store west of the Rockies.
Yeah,
if
yeah.
that deal goes through.
And so now they have $1 billion opportunity with selling the data they've collected on their shoppers for the last decade or two through their shopping program. So talk about a bait and switch. Shoppers were told that if they get the Kroger card, that they're going to get special discounts and they're going to get this and they're going to get points and they're going to get gas bonuses. Why did they give you all that stuff?
So you
They
buy
gave you all that stuff because now you're in the data lake. You're a little fishy in the data lake, and they can exploit you any way they want, and it's worth billions. Isn't that cool?
it is.
So now, instead of a customer, you are the product. It's beautiful. They started their a whole new business line from that. Kroger Strategic Solutions or something like that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's something Kroger Performance or something. So you can now get into the mind of every consumer in America, whether you know them or not. All you got to do is know their profile, and you can get 99% of who you are, and know everything you want, how to control you, your behaviors, when you shop, where you shop, what you buy, what your income is, what zip code you live in. Thanks, Kroger.
Well, you definitely. I mean, even if you don't know what they're thinking, you definitely know the pressure points that drive them towards your store, and that's probably even more important. That if I put that that 50% of this population will run out for sales in these areas, if I put these out, and they'll also buy extra, so I put the more expensive stuff in between the sales. I mean, that's been an old science. Put the more expensive.
Not only that, so
the 20-foot rule, and everything goes to the right.
Right. So somebody told me when I moved to Bloomington, and I'm just about to leave Bloomington, but I've been here for a little over a year in Bloomington, Indiana. They said there's Krogetto and there's Krogucci.
Yes.
And so
I remember that when I lived in Kentucky.
By the location of their store, whether it's a low-end Kroger store or whether a high-end. So this is right back to how high schools operate, right? What's the outcome of the high school related to? The zip code, the average income of the zip code the kids come from. Because that's what supports the tax base for the high school. That's what supports the outcome. And so you go to the ones where there's low income and
you see a markedly different.
You get the low results. So Kroger knows that. So now, if you don't think corporations can discriminate more, sure they can. They can make your Krogetto store in the low-class zip code a giant piece of shit, and they can make your Krogucci Kroger at the nice college mall by the university where the hip organic grocery stores are. They can make that Krogucci and make it real nice. And I'm sure anybody that shops at Kroger knows that they do. And they can use onerous shelving and security at the low income Krogers, and they can have the high income Krogers have smiling faces and bright smiles.
Well, I experienced that personally because I went to school at the University of Louisville, and the one that was up by up by the school was, they actually have really 3 grades. They got the intermediate grade. That was the one up by the school because the college students didn't have as much money, but we were on the cusp of the good neighborhood and the college neighborhood. So we kind of had a good mix. Then if you went down to where the black community was mostly, which was like 4 or 5 streets over from where I was, that was the Krogetto, as they called it. And then the Krogucci was way, way out in what Matthews was the area. And that was the one where, you went through and everything was so much nicer. There was a whole lot more stuff. They always had
fresh deli.
They always had people out there giving samples and all these,
Wine tasting on Saturday at 3.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. And, that's all been driven. But now with AI, you're going to see a whole lot more of those driven behaviors being pushed.
That is the corporate incentive that was created by the government to protect wealth. Mm-hmm. The corporate incentive that was created by the government in that designation was to protect wealth, to discriminate nonstop and shamelessly in the way that they invest corporate dollars.
Yeah.
Right? They invest corporate dollars for a corporate return. not for the good of humanity. I mean, if the poor people starve to death and the rich people produce profit, that's the corporate model. That's just okay.
It's not our fault. We didn't do anything, right? I mean, meanwhile, they're taking all the jobs out, replacing them with the low-end jobs like they have for the last 50 years. And then, maybe AI tells you that you should put a freeway through here instead.
Right, necropolitics, and they did put freeways right through the middle of black communities.
Oh yeah,
that's precisely what they did, because eminent domain. They're not going to go kick the college professor on the hill out of their house to run a highway through the middle of it. They're gonna kick all the black people out of the dense neighborhood and put a 6-lane right down through their living room. And they, this is the standard. If anybody thinks that we just did this to indigenous people, stole their land, no. No, America has stolen land from every minority available.
I only know of one case where eminent domain actually went against the grain a little in that neighborhood. So my grand aunt, bought a piece of property in New Jersey that she knew was going to be taken up by a freeway project at the edge of this community. Built the biggest possible house she could on it, and then went to court over it and got $1.8 million out of the deal.
There you go.
But I mean,
so
that's
this is like everything else.
Your average person in low income is not going to be like, oh well, I got a spare, X number of dollars. I'm going to go build the biggest place right here because they're going to put a huge freeway in here in 20 years to support that Amazon delivery center over there that they plan on building. So
it's just a microcosm of what international borders are. It's just a microcosm of necropolitics, right? That there are people, if we're going to draw an invisible line and we're going to call it a border, we can also draw an invisible line and call it a growth boundary. And we can say that the farmland on the right is worth $100 an acre and the farmland on the left is worth $10,000 an acre. And they draw the magic line. Now, how did they determine the magic line? By people that have power. They don't put people with power on the wrong side of the magic line. They do put people without power on the wrong side of the magic. So this is just like DoorDash and employment. The people that matter are considered. The people that don't matter are victimized. This is how you do it.
Another beautiful thing about that is now zoning boards, because AI is becoming so prevalent, right? AI is going to start doing our zoning. We just got zoning in my hometown.
It would be so much better than we are. I mean,
it's fair.
There is no doubt that AI can take massive amounts of data and come up with a result better than humans can. Faster, more accurately, more in all ways, right? So yeah, I mean, what you're saying is incontrovertible.
The empirical part, yes. The ethical part, though, that's the problem. So you make your black box AI, right? You unfortunately give it all the stereotypes because you're a $200,000 a year guy with 5 bonuses that put you up to almost $300,000. Your whole team went to Stanford, Columbia, NYU, MIT, all those great schools. So your biases are all being pushed in, as you like to say, into this system. Now when it does it, so it's just going to automatically look at low income and low educational rates as being, those are the communities we can sacrifice.
That's right. That's somebody is going to codify in there that the income level at which this algorithm applies is $75,000 and below household income. And so, those are going to get shuffled into the hopper on the right, and above $75,000 gross household income are going to get shuffled into the hopper on the left and be protected. The ones who go to the right are going to go through the meat grinder. It's like, then all these formulas work, and we go, well, here's the output. Nobody told you that the output is a result of how the thing was programmed in the first place.
Right. And the worst part is you can't really fight with it because the formulas do work. I mean, it's all empirically correct. The only problem is that you're started with these unethical assumptions that people that make less than $150,000 a year aren't as good as people that make that or more.
Yeah.
And
They're not as much trouble.
Right.
That's
I mean,
for sure.
the crime rates are different, right? You're going to start looking at crime rates and you're going to say all these things.
Of course. Wait, have you heard of that? There was a software that one of the AI softwares that came out a while back.
Weren't they doing? Was this the one about the rentals? The
No,
rentals?
This is one for kind of Minority Report stuff that predicted gun violence, and so they put it in there, and they of course predict gun violence where gun violence has been before, but it had all these listening these listening devices that were giving input that were recording car backfires and other noises as gunshots too. So all of a sudden, you've got your Minority Report data going like there's all kinds of criminal activity right over here. And where do the cops go? Right over there. And where's right over there? Yeah, the neighborhood where all the black people are. I mean, this stuff, it never ends, because no matter how it gets deployed, the biases creep in faster than anybody can deal with it. So, it sounds like a good idea of we're going to predict crime before it happens, but watch Minority Report. It's not as good of an idea as it sounds.
What about data miner?
Yeah.
And what they were doing, they were trying to look for social trends on Facebook and Twitter to predict where crime and riots would happen. And we found out that they were actually just monitoring black activists groups.
Right.
And the worst part about data miner is that the president of data miner is Ryan, Pat Ryan, right? Now the U.S. House Representative 18 from New York. So who's a guy who's going to be very, very, very lenient on these kind of things? A guy that used to be the president of a company like Data Miner.
Right.
And so you're going to see that he's going to even promote it. Like we'll see it like in Portland, because Portland's having trouble. They're going to start looking at those systems to predict where the crime is going to be, and they're going to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and absolutely that happens. Police presence and searching for criminals constantly in, for petty crime constantly in low income areas. What does it produce? It produces a hell of a lot of prisoners is what it produces. They could go, they always say that the wealthy consume drugs and alcohol and have the same rate of drugs and alcohol problems as the poor. They just don't get caught for it. So, if they wanted to go hang out 24 hours a day in wealthy neighborhoods and pull everybody over and test them for drunk driving, I guarantee you there'd be some fruitful shit going on, right? They'd catch a whole lot of rich people that just had a 3-martini lunch. I guarantee you they would. But
they did already.
For them. They're not in the corporate parking lot after lunchtime seeing who just drove back after a 3-martini lunch. I worked in the corporate world. I did the 3-martini lunches. I walked. I swear I walked. Anyway.
Worse than that. I mean, you go down to it's cocaine. That's Wall Street's favorite drug. You'd find more nose candy than half of Colombia has.
My favorite quote from the Bob Roberts movie, which is a brilliant movie, is don't do crack, kids. It's a ghetto drug.
That's right. Yeah. You never see a guy on Wall Street doing crack. It's always cocaine. Because that's the rich person's version of the same substance.
Exactly.
Don't do the Honda Civic version. Do the Porsche 911 version.
Yeah,
I know, because I've got
if anybody doesn't know, they criminalize crack at a much higher
rate,
penalty rate than they did cocaine, because drug war.
But again, we can see that AI. This is another great place for AI to start going. Where are the drugs being disseminated from? Of course, they're not going to look at themselves and say, "Well, hell, I know for sure that I can get some from the guy 3 cubicles down. He's been doing it all morning."
Right. Phil in accounting.
Yeah, he's higher than a kite. Right? You're going to look like, it's got to be that neighborhood down there, that sketchy one with those people we don't like already,
Right.
And that brings me to another point. So homeless is a huge problem. And they're talking about using AI to create homeless solutions, right? I mean, obviously the best solution is just to put houses,
Yeah,
affordable
yeah,
houses, right? But we
that
got
wouldn't
guys,
work.
we got guys like, what was his from? What is that company that just laid off like 6,000 employees, or maybe it was two? He's down in San Francisco. His name I can see just went out of my head.
What industry?
It's in he does HR, human resources. He donated like $30 million to the University of San Francisco to come up with some stupid reports. And I mean, utterly stupid. One's like, well, homeless people enjoy to live in their cars because that gives them a sense of safety.
Right. Yeah. Gig economy. Gig workers love the gig economy because of the flexibility. Yes.
Right.
Homeless
I
love
know.
their cars because of the safety, because there's 4 locks instead of 1.
Well, but of course they're going to love that. Would you rather sleep on the concrete and have somebody kick your stuff all around, or would you prefer your car? I mean, let's think. It does not. We don't think we need to spend $30 million and have like 6 PhDs come up with that.
You're the middle class homeless if you have a car.
That's right. You're moving on up, Wheezy.
You're not at the bottom yet.
So what I was getting at is that they're using we're always being told that AI is going to solve all these problems. It's going to tell us what neighborhoods we can invest in. I mean, that's just nonsense to me with that application of AI.
It's gonna confirm more of our biases and drive them in deeper. AI, if you want to think of it in a very clear way, AI is like the human confirmation bias come to life, right? Or come to death. It's everything we think and believe, and then we create a system that outputs more of it. And the problem, as we go to, is that not only do we not know how it was generated, but we don't know if it's correct or not. And so all of a sudden, if this AI and Roman Yaplansky out of University of Louisville, your alma mater, is a very well-known AI scientist and university professor. He talks about the oracle system of if you trust the output of black box AI, you're essentially making it an oracle, which you have no idea how it's guiding you anymore, whether its output is right or wrong, harmful or helpful. And to trust corporate AI is totally insane. I mean, trusting Jeffrey Dahmer and trusting corporate AI would be the same thing. You're trusting a serial killer not to kill you. That's a bad idea. Don't do it.
Well, I think we've got plenty of proof that it's going to always pick the bottom line over you. Dow Chemical.
Illinois right now, right?
Illinois
has
Ohio
more trains laying on their side than straight up, I think.
Ohio,
yeah. I'm sorry, it's Ohio that has the trains laying in piles, I believe.
Right down in Brooklyn. They got that whole river that they totally poisoned after 80 years,
hopefully some politician will show up and drink the water, because then we'll know it was good. Then we'll know it's extra tasty.
And tell us about how his days as being a youth in low income housing probably ate a paint chip here or there.
Right. Yeah,
lead
poisoning didn't stop me from being a senator,
or going to the top of the line universities. If he had truly lead poisoning, he would not be a senator. He would have. So we can rule that one out.
Right. So this is one of the great techniques of predatory capitalism, is making the exception appear to be the rule. Right. And every poor person is a potential American millionaire. Yeah, no, that is not the case. You can look at our educational system. You can look at our investment in communities by zip codes. It's not the case. Everybody does not have an equal opportunity and equal protection under the law so that they can thrive and become the best person and human that they can be. That's not the case.
No, it's definitely not the case. It never has been.
It needs to be. It needs to be if we want this country to survive, because what we're seeing right here, again, with the gig economy, to come back to it, why is the gig economy so important? It's not because DoorDash sucks, even though DoorDash does. The gig economy is important because it is breaking the entire social architecture that America is based upon. If there's no more employment and employees, then then the power of humanity to guide their future doesn't even exist, because now you've got corporations guiding themselves to the future, which will not include you.
Yeah, I'm always a little puzzled by that solution of the corporations. It seems like there's a certain amount of self-destructiveness. I mean, yes, the logic of it makes sense, right? I mean, if I can get rid of employees, if I can get rid of all my costs, if I can take all my externalities, as Milton Friedman would say, and put them on somebody else, that's great. But it comes out to me that you need one thing: you need consumers. And if you've destroyed that base, then what exactly are you doing? I mean, unless you're printing up your own money and playing in a monopoly world, right, with computer, it doesn't seem that that's going to be a viable platform for very long.
I think they want to print their own money and be in a monopoly world in their bunkers in New Zealand. I honestly think that if you look at how the ultra wealthy are investing their money, it would seem to me pretty clear that they're planning to out-survive us.
Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah. So when they've already, one of the things that happens when a company goes public, like DoorDash does, is that the founders hit lottery. So the founders of DoorDash walked away. Tony Hsiu, Andy Feng, and Stanley Tang. There was another guy too who didn't stay in the operation, but those three guys walked away with like $2.2 billion each. So the way that this Ponzi scheme is set up, the way that this pump and dump scheme is set up, because now DoorDash's market value, the number of shares outstanding times the market price, is about a third of what it was.
Hold on one second.
Yeah. So
Hello?
Connor, it's me. I'm in the kitchen. I need you to come upstairs and help me take stuff out of the back.
Okay. We're gonna have to cut this a little short. I got an emergency.
Okay, no worries. So wrap it up just by saying that I don't remember what point we were on.
They're going to outlive us with their billions of dollars.
They're going to outlive us. They do believe that that's the scenario coming, and I think you see that is acting like it. That's again why I suggest people move toward this log outage of gig apps, because you want to kill this gig economy before it becomes so status quo across our world, before dictators and despots and corporations take it up to enslave people that will never escape from it. You really want to kill it. So let you go for your emergency. It's been a pleasure again.
Has been
last time.
Yes, thank you. Again, we're with Jeff Thomas Black, and I have to end this short. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.